Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that you're here to join us for the day. And let's see, today is Friday, March the 21st. My goodness, the year 2025 is almost 25% over. That's pretty amazing. Well, I am in Kansas City. Let's see, we've got a comment or two. Jeannie? Yeah, I see that, Jeannie. It comes up with a message. Jeannie just asked in the chat room. The message is still going out with Dr. Tim's name on it, but I took a screenshot of it, so maybe we can send it to him and he can figure out what's going on. Welcome to Linda and Joe, Janie, Christina, everybody. Delighted you're here. We've got a cool 50-degree day here in Kansas City, Missouri, on the road. Getting lots of playtime with my granddaughter, especially. She's 2.5. And getting some just hangout time with my grandson, who's, let's see, I guess 16 days now, 17 days. Anyway, feeling very blessed and delighted that and feeling blessed that you're here. And so our topic today, Joe, is it your eternal day today? Well, happy eternal day. Joe just put in the text that he is 65. Wow. Just a kid, just getting started. How cool is that? I love it. I can't wait till 100 rolls around and 120, 140, 160. And remember, everybody, please put the date of our New Year's Eve party on your calendar. You're invited. If you've been part of this radio show, you're eternally invited at Heartland on December 31st. Mark it on your calendar, 4949. We've got a New Year's Eve celebration planned. So put it on your calendar for 4949. Be delight to have you there. And we've had some questions. Let's see, we've got a hand up. So let's say hello to Tiffany. Hey there, young lady. Welcome. Glad you're here. How do
Hello,
you
can you hear
be?
me?
You're loud and clear, young lady.
Excellent. I am Kira and Merrick's daughter,
Right?
and the last couple of worksheets I've done, I've gotten stuck, and I'm in the middle of um, I quit my job not too long ago and I'm building my business again because I've done it before. And I feel like this
Right.
is really intentional doing this work because it's opening up a
Mm.
lot of channels in me. And the last couple of pages I've gotten stuck and so I would like to work them through with you. And I can also feel like coincidentally, my enrollments into my programs have also kind of frozen. So I feel like there's a big energy shift waiting on the other side of this unstuckness.
Okay. Well, we'll hold the space for being unstuck. And, one of the things that a vision that I got for this work was to literally, and you mentioned that word, the channels in the structure, to literally open every channel within us for the active presence of love to flow through us, and
Hmm.
especially to get unstuck whatever has been locked in bone. That literally these energetic patterns get locked on such a deep level that we open that up. So, and this forgiveness tool is the most profound tool I've found yet to consistently, persistently move forward in that process. So, have you got a specific question about a worksheet, or where do you want to start?
Yes. Well, I have one of my students is also one of my cousins, and I she's really successful. Do you want me to like tell you a little background on it and then get
Sure.
into it?
Yeah.
Like,
Give
how
me
does
some
this work?
history.
Okay. So she's really successful. She did what my round one year-long program a while back, and she was in my advanced class and we did really well. And there's a part of me there's a part of me that feels jealousy. And also, when I say this, I want to say I've done a lot of self work, so it's not like consuming me, but it is coming up, and
But it's
I'm
there.
able to like
Okay.
look at it from a distance and be like, oh, that's something to work through. So I know it's mine. I know all of that bit to it, but I'm still stuck in it. So there's a bit of jealousy. I also feel um unseen by her. So I wrote down jealous, insecure, unworthy, unseen, and not smart enough is what comes up when I'm working with her.
Okay.
And so I was gonna go do a worksheet on them. And when I get down to like number 6, where it's checking back in, like, how do I feel? I'm like, I'm wanting to be able to say better, but I think when I go through it, kind of activates me more, and I always feel frustration when I get to that point. And so I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm like, a part of me questions like when because I kind of write stuff down when it comes up, and then I go to do the worksheet when I can sit down and do it. And I'm not necessarily connected to that emotion when I start the worksheet. So I wonder if, like, by the time I'm getting through the worksheet, it's reminding me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this way, and it stays activated by the time I get down to the bottom. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, but I can't get through the whole worksheet and without still feeling that way. Like, it's not, and I've done several worksheets where like I'll immediately feel that release and that healing and be significantly shifted by the time I get to the bottom of it. And
Right.
so I've tried a couple with her, and I tried one with another situation. Um, and it's still coming up. I get to the bottom and I'm not feeling that relief, and I'm feeling a little stuck in how to
Okay.
navigate that.
Perfect. Right on track. And my offering is that, as you've heard me say before, the healing process is certainly not Dr. For Good. I know you're familiar with that with working with people. But when you are working with, let's say, an issue that, gee, it's something that happened to you when you were 4, and it's a reflection of something that was in your genes from mom, which was a reflection of something in her genes from her father's father, which was a reflection of, which was a reflection of. And what tends to happen is we tend to go through layers. I'm working on this worksheet. I cancel the goal. I breathe. I let this go. And all of a sudden, I hit a new level of vitality. And what that
Mm,
means is a new depth of that generational pattern can surface in me. And that will tend to lead to confusion. It's like, wait a minute, I thought I was getting clarity here. And all of a sudden, my clarity's gone and I feel like I'm in a giant brain fart. What happened? Well, what happened is you became vital enough to handle the next layer, and there it is up in your face. And
right.
usually if you're really doing your work and you're paying attention to your breath, when a major issue surfaces, my experience is within 2 or 3 days it's gone. And I can think back to when I first started doing this worksheet process, and I would be working on a particular issue, and I might work on that issue for a week or 2 weeks, and finally get that breakthrough. Or other times I find I kind of hit a plateau, and it's like, gee, I'm not getting anywhere, not getting anywhere, not getting where. And all of a sudden, bang, I'm now at the level of vitality where I can really handle this level of energy. And now I look at it, years later, something that might take me 2, 3, 4 days a week to work through. And I can see now with the practice and, having undone some of the heavier layers, that I could do something 10 times the strength of what I attempted to do in those early days, and do it like, very rapidly. So it's something that you develop the skill to do. And as you do, you get better at it. The energy moves more easily. But it sounds like the bottom line worksheet, you mentioned several energetic experiences you were having, and each of those would be a separate worksheet. But then, as I understood it, the conclusion was at the end of each of them, the process that you're really facing is frustration.
Yes.
So,
And it's not just with her. Like, it started with um a different situation where I got to the bottom and I was frustrated. Like, so frustrated that I just scribbled at the bottom and like had to put the sheet aside. Like, and I've had, so it's been like two separate situations, and then the one that I just described with my cousin. And
right,
so not just with that one, it's like a theme at the moment.
right.
And I haven't been able to fill out a worksheet. I've been kind of avoiding it ever since because I'm like, I feel like I need some guidance in that, you know?
Okay. Well, what do you say we go ahead and do a worksheet, and let's start out with and make the focal point of it the emotion, which I would offer would go into 1B,
Okay.
and that would be frustration. And
Okay.
start out with I, Tiffany, who I'm love, am feeling frustration.
All right.
Now, since the or the object of attention on which all of this has been stirred is a family member, your cousin, then the next step would to be to look at what's the thought behind that frustration as it relates to your cousin. So what I hear is there's the bottom line of everything you described happening when you compare yourself to your cousin is that your thoughts are of some sort of or some form of inferiority. Is it,
Yes.
so would that be I'm not as good as her, I'll never be as good as her, she's better than me, you know, and it's important to get to as crisp a picture of the thought and the situation as you can, because the way the mind organizes information, it's almost like you can imagine it's a huge filing system. And the only pathway into the core file where the ultimate frustration is stored and therefore going to be broken is going to be to identify precisely what the goal is that drives that situation.
Right. Right.
So then if you look at the frustration and you described it in terms of your cousin and your comparison with your cousin, what would the most uh, significant thought be in relationship to your cousin?
So for clarification, when I get to the bottom and I feel the frustration is at that I'm not able to finish the sheet, not necessarily tied to the cousin. But what you're
Oh,
saying is
okay.
to look at it and tying to the cousin, or do you want me to go to the
Well, you
emotions that I feel directly to my cousin?
no, I'd say yes. I'd say all of the above. I would do some work around, what the thought is with your cousin. Maybe um, you know, comparison and I'm not good enough. But that doesn't sound like the one that's really in your face right now. I got a better picture with that last statement you made. So
Okay.
I would say that you do it around, I can't get this finished.
Okay. All right. So frustration. And then, so for 1C, what would I put there if it's not my cousin?
I'd
Would
put
be,
the
I can't
worksheet
get
in.
this finished. Okay.
Yeah, it's a worksheet that you're having a challenge finishing. Or is it the worksheet or is it the issue that you're having a challenge getting finished with?
I mean, I'm leaning towards the issue, I would think,
Okay.
if
So then
if
this
I
would be
look at it
back
that way.
to the whole issue with the cousin
Right.
that you're having trouble breaking through that. It's not that you're having trouble getting finished with the worksheet itself.
So as we were talking and I was asking myself, how would I tie frustration into my cousin? Because it's not one of the initial things that came up. It would be that I'm frustrated with myself because I don't feel like and this is a common theme where I don't feel like I've allowed people to see all of me all the time. And so then I get frustrated that when someone doesn't see me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm frustrated at myself for that situation being that way.
Okay, if you've got another piece of paper handy, I'd make a note then.
Right.
So this what I hear you saying is that this frustration branches out into many areas of your life.
Yes.
And so what I just heard you describe is one of the places frustration comes up is when people don't see who you really are. So I'd make a note of
Yes.
that for a future worksheet.
Okay.
And then frustration about I hide from myself. So that would be another worksheet is hiding so that people can't see me. Each of those will produce a different healing. And what I'm hearing, and if you just once you get a chance, if you go back and just listen even to the few minutes we've talked, so far, I can see and hear why this is seemingly difficult because it has many tentacles.
Mm,
It's going down into how you hide, which might be insecurity around comparing yourself or others comparing you. Maybe that's a childhood experience with your cousin. It's the not being seen. What does that reflect? I'm not good enough, or other people are better than I am, or I'm not worthy to be seen. Whatever the variation on the theme is. So I'd make note of all of those things. One of the reasons for doing this worksheet in writing is because what I've found is that it helps me to pay closer attention to my thoughts. And in this case, with the fact that you're sharing those thoughts with me and I get to reflect them back, that really points to several different tentacles. When you look at, I think you were on the show the other day when I was talking about, here you're sitting in a room, I'm sitting in a room, I look around, I see a light, I see a closet door, I see a towel. I see a lamp. I see some vitamins on the table. There's a television set over there. In order for my mind to generate such a detailed holographic picture of all of these things, how many? I mean, I don't know any way to quantify them because I don't think anybody's ever quantified this. But how many brain cells have to fire in me for my brain? I mean, the world has taught me I'm seeing it with my eye, but I'm not. I'm really being generated by my brain. How many brain cells has to fire in order to produce this holographic picture in my mind? It's got to be billions, trillions, I don't know. If an ant were sitting here looking at the room, the ant wouldn't say, "Oh, window. Oh, there's a sign above the board that says
right.
dream. Oh, there's a," because their brain. I mean, they're in the same actuality,
Hmm.
but the output their brain outputs, I'm sure, doesn't approximate anything that we see. So, how many brain cells have to fire in order to produce that? And when you look at the number of tentacles that you've described so far around this issue of frustration, the number of things, and I suspect we haven't started to really scratch the surface of it yet, the number
Yeah,
of
it's
things that your mind is, the bottom line has been frustration. So, if you think of it as, uh, what you're doing is you're taking a digging machine and digging into your own unconscious. And we've established at least 5 different roads you could go down into the unconscious and do a piece of work. And it may be, by the time we end up, maybe it'll be 15 different roads. I could imagine that, there are many, many, maybe the 3-year-old that wanted to measure up to what the older cousin was doing, but of course the 3-year-old can't possibly do what the 7-year-old can do. So frustration and, how many holes are you going to dig in order to weaken or de-energize the brain cells inside of you that produce this holographic image that is seems to be so frustrating, but
well,
it's
and
really
even
based.
sorry, I didn't
Go
mean to
ahead.
interrupt you. I was gonna say, even as we're talking, I'm being shown like it- how because when I was younger, I always said that I was my the way I was in the life I lived with my mom was completely different than the way I lived in the life I was, with my dad.
Hmm.
And that and it took me like a long time, maybe into my 20s before I felt like I could really merge those. But now I'm like, did those really merge? I feel like they didn't on certain levels. And then I have friendships, on different parts. And there's a side of me that's really intellectual. And then there's the side of me that's really uh lighthearted and funny, and certain people and certain friends and certain situations call for different parts of me,
Right.
and so that's what's coming up is like all these areas where I didn't realize that I was being a certain role in
Right.
certain situation into certain people, and then all of a sudden I'm starting to integrate myself on new levels where I'm at right now being 44, and
Awesome.
I'm looking around like, "Oh shit, there's people who I've known my entire life who don't fully know who I am
Have a clue.
because they
Right.
haven't had access to those other parts of me." And here
Right.
I am trying to own all of who I am
Yeah.
and getting frustrated at not being seen.
Hmm.
And at
And
myself
guess
for
what?
like not stepping into that, you know?
Right. And guess what? There's a guy 2,000 years ago who really created this forgiveness work. And guess what he'd say to you right now?
What?
Every one of those selves is a false self. And in order for you, Tiffany, the real you, who you are, to live, those ones must die.
Ooh, so good.
That the energy in brain cells that has me believe, well, it's okay for me to be this in this group of people, and tomorrow I'll be that in that group of people, and the next day I'll be that in another group. None of those that's are who you are,
Right.
but it's who you play through. And so if you try to bring the one that's way over here on the left together with the one on the right, that's where frustration is going to be monumental. And so my offering would be that your real work is going to be to weaken the content or forgive the content in brain cells that produced persona A. In the Greek language, the word persona means mask. It's a mask we put on over ourselves. So to weaken the energetic patterns of persona A, the funny Tiffany, to weaken the persona of uh, personality B, the intellectual, to weaken this one, this one, this one, to weaken all of those enough so that they have no essence of their own, but simply become energetic patterns which you express the truth of who you are, an integrated self through them. That you
Mm,
weaken them enough that you lose the idea that that's even who you are, because it's not. It's just it's just a construct. It's a mask. Oh, it's safe in this group of people to put this funny mask on, but oh, I can't show that to my parent, my parent family, or this or that, or so weakening those personas, forgiving those personas, dismantling them to the point where they no longer come up with enough strength to prove to you that that's who you are,
right.
but rather you wake up beyond them and you bring who you are to. If I choose to be funny, I'm with a group of people. I like to play funny, but I know who I am playing that.
Right.
And I'm integrated into all of that rather than those separate selves, rather than compartmentalizing myself into where it's safe to be this or that or the other, and really discovering who you are, and getting safe enough or aware enough to know, like, let's say, the true being. The thought comes to share with you, over the years I've had many people, when I talk about the hostility of the world and such, and that a child never ever ever, there's no child that ever deserved to be attacked, to be spoken to harshly, to be mentally, emotionally, physically abused. Like, it never was deserved. And I've had many people over the years who've come to me, and this is especially men, who come to me and said, well, I got beat a lot when I was a kid, but it didn't hurt me. It's like,
Right.
right, yeah. Let me tell you what, buddy. I see it. You've been in the gym. You've got muscles out the wazoo. You could wrap me around your little finger, and if I tied both arms behind your back, you could beat me. But here's what I'll tell you: the truth is, if you went back to the first moment where that person who was supposed to be there, honoring you and cherish you, gave you the look, the pain you felt at that first assault was so enormous. You, tough guy, would probably not be able to handle it. You'd break down.
Mm,
And so we take on a persona and says, "Oh, go ahead, beat me. I can handle it." But that's not the truth. The truth is, in our being, there's a tenderness. The song. You might remember the melody line in the song about Vincent Van Gogh that said, "And this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you."
mm,
And every one of us has that tenderness, and we've lost it. Especially in the male realm, in our toughness and our, I can handle it. I can take it. The truth is, nobody can take it. We create facades, we create personas to handle it. But the truth is, if we're ever going to really experience who we are, we have to go back to that original state of being, and allow that state of being, get safe enough to bring that state of being, first of all, into our own minds, where a lot of that trauma has been stored, be able to breathe through it, let it go. And then you see that your whole all the personas you've ever had, and your physiology are just an instrument through which you get to create and express consciously because you're fully conscious. Your conscious awareness isn't stolen from you by one of those personas. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I feel like I'm at this place because I have a psychology background. I do, all- coaching. Like this is also the work that I
Right.
do, and so I feel like I've done layers of this, you know, through my entire life as I'm doing this work with other people. I do it with myself, right? And so, I've translated my ability to be authentic with like merging the parts of myself because I'm being authentic in all of them. There's a little bit of that not being true, but the way that I have looked at it is that I'm meeting people where they're at, right? So if I'm spending time with, I have a friend who's 21, and when I'm hanging out with him and his friends, there's a little lightheartedness that goes on there because like there's certain I'm meeting them where they're at. And
Right.
so that's how I've seen that is, well, I'm meeting people where they're at. But now I'm in a place where I get like I can feel what you're saying to be true. And even, the last 3 years have been the deepest shadow work of my life. Lots of death, like, lots of just destroying, like eradicating my roots and foundations in order to rebuild myself. And even separating, like I'm not with my family. I'm in a completely different country. I haven't been around friends. I haven't been around family. And there is this part of like, okay, and that's continuing to be so. Like things are lining up even when I go back to the States to get some other things done. Like schedules are being mismatched. Like there's something, the universe is keeping me separated for a
Hmm.
reason. And as you're talking, I'm like lining that up, like, oh, there's some detachment that's needing to happen so that I can reconfigure what we're talking about right now. But
Right.
I'm in the realm of like, I don't know what I don't know. And even in like meditations, and I feel like I'm just right on the cusp. Like I have one foot in, or maybe I'm dipping one of my toes in,
All right.
like certain levels of it almost feels like mastery with this because I've reached levels in my meditations where I'm just like galactic channeling shit, right? And so like to bring it all together, I don't know who I am
Well,
on the other
what?
side of that. Or I guess I do. I feel like there's essence of me because I feel really authentic in how I express myself in all of these, but like I said, there's I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. There's one foot in and one foot out. There's one foot
Got it.
in the mask and one foot in the authenticity. And what does that look like on when they merge? Like,
Well, it sounds like you've done enough work that you're ready to take it all to the next level. And
yes.
there's a section in my book that looks at some of the challenges of living life without tools. And there's only one place that I have found the tool that allows us to collapse everything in the mind that's false, literally dropping the mind altogether, being out of our minds so that that true authentic self becomes a direct experience, and then strengthening that and bringing it into my physiology. And it sounds to me like you're just ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
pretty cool.
chomping at the bit. I'm chomping at the bit. Like, what does that look
I
like?
got it. I hear you.
That's why when I'm feeling stuck in this, because I feel like this work is part of that path, right? Like it's a big part of that path because I can feel it happening in my energetic system. And I feel like that the last 3 years have set me up for this work. And
Awesome.
so that's why I'm like, all right, let's, what do I do now? Being stuck
Has
in the worksheets is getting me because these worksheets have been what have been like facilitating that for me. So I'm like, shit, I'm
right.
stuck in the point of the facilitation that
You
has
know,
been working. So now what?
we, we back in the early days at Heartland, that goes back 35 or 6 years ago, we had a music director when he was at Heartland. He wrote a song, and the song was called, I'll send you a link to it, Stuck in My Story, My Pain and My Glory. That was the melody
Oh,
line of a song. And yeah, that's a stage that everybody has to go through in doing it. And I don't know if Carrie has offered to breathe you yet to do any still point breathing, but that will be one of the tools I think that will assist in processing literally as you're tapping into your essential nature. It's like as that begins to awaken and we use the breath properly, that essential nature, the presence of love, riding on the breath, delivered to the cell, is what transmutes what is held in the cell from the past, right down to and including the genetics.
mm,
And when that transmutation takes place, then the body mind unit itself, what we call, at least in the world, a body mind unit, is prepared for incarnation. My take is most people are hanging, there's so much genetic trauma in their bodies and then childhood traumas that the being that we are, has kind of left the structure and hanging out somewhere in space. It's like, I don't go near that thing. There's too much trauma in there. And as you take the breath and go in and literally transmute the trauma, it's the presence of love being delivered by the breath that is the master solvent. That just like water carved out the Grand Canyon, carves out a space in us to literally incarnate in this world, in our
mm,
physiology fully, bringing, being safe enough to bring that active presence of love into being. And the roadblocks that you run into to that happening, literally, you know, what I hear you saying is you made a choice, and I don't know whether it was a conscious choice or an unconscious choice, or I recognize it for myself that in part for me it was kind of like the universe kicked me the limitation and stuck my face in and said, "You're going to do this." That's like been part of it. And then what you have to face, and when you're the early adopter, if you think about the people in your life when you were a young person, mom, dad, parent or grandparents, neighbors, friends, aunts, uncles, cousins. Is there anybody there that you could have had this conversation with back then? Like that would have had any comprehension of what you were talking about?
like this conversation or
Yeah,
the
this
feeling
conversation
that
that we're having.
um yeah, I feel like I could have had that with my stepmom.
That's cool. And
I
that's
just
pretty
don't
rare.
think I was are 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 you talking how younger, like younger as in a couple
Yeah,
years ago or
yeah, in
younger
your early life.
in my early
The
life?
point I'm heading toward is to recognize if there wasn't somebody in your bloodline that you could sit down with you and say, "Okay, sweetheart, here's how forgiveness works. Here's who you are. Let's get through this." Then you're the early adopter in your family system. And when you're
Right.
the early adopter, it falls on
That
you to
part's
say,
true.
I got to handle all this crap.
Yeah, I
Your
don't think there was
stepmom.
anyone who that maybe through the language of Catholicism or something like that, but not in the way that we're speaking. This is
Yeah,
me and like I'm kind of leading the way and my cousins have taken some of my cousins have taken some of my classes. So we're the that first line of defense of or not defense, but you know what I mean. We're that
yeah,
first
doing the
line of
work. Yeah,
taking it to this level. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
But when you're the early adopter, that means you get to handle all the crap.
Yay.
So congratulations. I think back, I couldn't imagine to be even starting to have a conversation, anything like this with anybody in my family system when I was a
Right.
kid. Like it just didn't exist.
Yeah, same.
So, so it's taken me a little better than a half a century now from when I started doing this work and started developing it. And then it was about 45 or so years ago that I came across the Aramaic and the forgiveness process. And literally, to be able to explain the forgiveness process the way that I do now with the clarity that I have, it took me 35 years working with it to be able to go, oh, perception. It's just a construct of your mind. Oh,
Mhm.
notice you're never upset unless somebody's, not fulfilling a goal you want for them. Oh, goal is the key way into collapsing perception, collapsing the mind. It's literally the way you get to be out of your mind. People talk about, or you've heard people talk about probably what they call a near death experience. But a near death experience, my offering is that a near death experience is anything but a near death experience. It's actually a near life experience. Most people have lost their lives, their human lives, to the false images in their own minds. And when they experience clinical death, the mind collapses. It's gone. It's out of the way. Now, this being love can get to experience who it is directly. It's a near life experience, not a near
Mm,
death experience. That's why so many people come back from that clinical death transformed and their lives go in totally different directions. And what for me the forgiveness process is it gives us an opportunity to do a series of near life experiences without having to risk checking out through clinical death, but by
right.
collapsing the mind's output. At first, when you do the worksheet process, it's only for maybe an instant and the mind jumps right back online and it jumps back on and it jumps back on. But as you collapse on a consistent, persistent basis, you get to bigger and bigger spaces where you go, oh, big go, I'm not any of that. This is what I am. I'm the one experiencing this. All this stuff going on in my body, mind, unit. Geez, that's great grandpa, great grandma. You know, it's just a repeat. The replicate mind just
Hmm.
repeats. And, basically that's what the world promotes because kings don't benefit. The people who run the society for thousands of years don't benefit from you living as the true human being that you are. They benefit from you being a good commercial servant, doing what you're told. And, you know, when we're told, oh, the king wants that person over there's property, we need to go make war and steal their property and kill their citizens. The king wants us to do that. The king, and if we function as true human beings, as love, we'd say, excuse me, king, get lost. Thank you very much. So it's been promoted and promoted and promoted, this hostility and fear-based mindset. And, working through it, if you're the early adopter, it's a giant piece of work to do. So I acknowledge you for sticking to it and moving forward. And I understand and hear the frustration. And the other side of frustration is as you recognize what's going on in your own process, and it's well defined, then what tends to move into the space is trust. Oh,
Mm,
I still got this bag of garbage I'm carrying around. It's an old habit, and old habits die hard. But I now see what I'm doing, and I'm going to have patience.
right.
It doesn't have to happen yesterday.
I can trust myself to navigate it. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. And
and you
I
can trust
definitely
the
have had
tools to
that with
carry you
things.
there. Awesome.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, I
And
feel
so
that to be
frustration.
true.
So the capacity for your mind to produce a reality, and remember, in this work, and I don't know how deeply you've come across this idea, but there are two different games going on all the time. There's reality, which is nothing more than the output of our minds, and there's actuality, what this world is about. The Harvard research, in the lab they measure people. They've got people hooked up to electrodes in the brain. They measure 10,000 brain cells firing, and the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. So when we look at what we think is out there, we're looking at a picture generated by our brain made up of a max of 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing. And it's
Right.
been estimated in the same time frame that the actuality, as opposed to the reality output from my mind or your mind or Harry or Bill's mind, the actuality may be as much as 20 trillion bits of data.
Mhm.
And so what I'm opening myself to as I let go of the limitations, if the ant were able to let go of, what the ant is looking for, the ant's goals in the environment, would it be able to open its eyes and go, oh my God, I'm in a room with a window and a door and a picture and a lamp and vitamins. And oh my God, look at this. We're going to be as shocked, I think, as the ant would be at its first comprehension of looking around the room that you're in and going, oh my God, look at this room. How cool is this? We're going to be
Right.
that shocked when we really stop living in the constructs of our mind and thinking that's life and open our senses, our higher senses, to what the actuality is and what we're actually capable of. And it sounds like the main block that you're working with now, with all the work that you've done, the main construct that you're going to have to defeat or diffuse in your mind is this thing of frustration.
Mm.
And when frustration disappears and you're in the middle of your muddle and here's this whatever it is going on, you breathe, you function out of and experience yourself as who you are, as love, and you embrace and invite this, whatever it is, rather than the mind shooting up frustration. Oh my God, I'm so frustrated, and shutting the whole process down. That as you literally diffuse, forgive, remove the capacity for your physiology to produce frustration, then you'll take a quantum leap to the next level of what your work is. And that frustration will be replaced by trust and understanding.
Mm. I'm ready for that. And
I
I feel
I'm
like,
I hear you.
the whole planet is, I mean, I feel like we're this that's what's happening right now in humanity is this, like we're all getting to do this work in a way. Like, shit comes up so we can look at it so it can be released. And so that's why we're all humanity right now is looking at all of our shit because it's coming up to be healed and to be released. And so all of my classes that I'm doing and all my stuff is geared towards love, the act of love, the expansion of love, because that gets to digest all of the things that we're experiencing. And, I feel like I was born on this planet to right here, right now for this personal work and this collective work. So this is
Doing your
why we're
purpose.
here, you
Yep,
know?
I'm with you 100%. We
Hmm.
actually do a workshop called Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. And first order of business is to recognize who you truly are. You know, the world has a purpose for us, and its purpose is be a good commercial servant, make
Right.
money, pay taxes and die. There's your job, there's your purpose. And when we function out of that, then our perception is governed by that purpose. Once we open to what you're talking about, that higher level of being, then we recognize who we are and what we're really here for. And now perception totally changes when that takes over, and perception follows purpose. And when you realize who you are as a human being, then everything the mind does changes.
Right. Now, when I originally called, my goal was to get through a worksheet with
Right.
you. Is that something we still have time for? I
Let's go
know.
for it. Absolutely. Well, we'll see what comes up. I mean, if other stuff serves.
Oh, did I lose you? Hello? I can't hear you anymore. It cut off mid-sentence, but I can see my words coming up on the screen.
Hmm,
Oh, I heard the
let me
hmm.
see. Am I there
There,
now? Oh,
now
you
I can
did?
hear you. Yeah, now I
Okay.
can hear you.
Yeah, weird. Not sure what happened. So anyway, well, what I was saying is that, you know, let's move forward with the worksheet, and if other stuff comes up, we'll veer off into that. And we're here, you know, the purpose of this show is to take you through that if you're ready to do that. And so if we get it done today, great. If we don't, we get it done Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If it takes 10 days, I don't care. The whole idea is, this isn't just for you. Everybody who's listening is processing what this is bringing up for them because we're all in this boat together. And
Right.
so, yeah, we'll stick with you totally to take this worksheet to its completion.
Perfect. Thank you.
So
Um,
again, and the whole idea would be to literally disable your mind's ability, whatever is happening in your world, to experience frustration, because that's just a construct of the mind. And as you collapse it, you may need to collapse it, There's a point where I think it was Peter asked yesterday, how many damn worksheets do we have to do? How many times do I need to forgive us to my brother? Is 7 times enough? He's obviously
That's
getting
right.
the idea it was going to take more than one. And
77.
in Aramaic, yeah, the Greeks say he said 7 times 70, but in Aramaic it's 77 times 70.
Hmm.
Which I'm sure that the disciples weren't sitting there with their pens going, let's see, 7 sevens 49, carry the 4, trying to figure out exactly how many worksheets. It wasn't about a literal number. It's, 0 is infinity, 7's the number of completion. Each one of us will do an infinite amount of work around any issue we have until we're complete with it. That's just the process. And when you develop the patience for that and the trust that, okay, I'm in process and it's okay. It doesn't have to be done yesterday. Although, if one of the power person messages that we got was, well, you better get that done, then we'll be pressured into, but it's got to be done yesterday. And that's part of what will create the frustration.
Mm, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, frustration around, so I'm not clear at this moment. Did we arrive at the point where we decided that the frustration was about the interaction or the personas that you developed in relationship to your cousin, and that it wasn't about completing the worksheet so much? Did I understand that correctly?
I think the frustration is its own mega subject because it's like there's a lot of branches on that one.
Right.
If
Yeah,
I, but if I,
you're going to drill down in many places on that one. But for
right,
this,
that one, I mean, my cousin might is part of that, but there's a much bigger picture going on. But under my cousin, the sheet that I was working on with her, where I got frustrated and stopped, which was
right.
was the I just made a list of emotions I was feeling and started at the top, and it was jealousy. But when I'm tuning in, if I could do the insecure one with you, or should we start
Hmm.
with the jealousy one?
Whatever fits for you.
I would like to look at the insecure one.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
So
write
then,
insecure at the top.
so
Insecure.
if, well, frustration, I leave that as the emotion.
Okay.
And then the thought behind it is a thought of insecurity, a thought that ties in with insecurity. So, what would that thought be specifically? Would it be, I'm not good enough? She's better than me? You know, I was told
Um,
I couldn't do it. What, if you were to tap in with that one, what would that thought be?
yeah, so when I look at the jealousy one, which would also match if we're doing
Relates?
the
Yeah.
fresh, yeah, yeah. So the write downs I had was like she's more successful, she's smarter, she's more privileged, she's better than me. Like those were the things. She doesn't see
Okay.
me is
So, if
one
you
of the
got a note of
frustration.
each of those thoughts, each
Yes.
of those thoughts is a different worksheet.
Okay.
Because remember what it takes in order, the mind has this amazing capacity. It's a gift and it can be a curse if we don't know how to use it. The mind has this amazing capacity to turn thoughts into pictures.
Mm.
And the thoughts that create the pictures will reflect as emotions in the body. So each thought that you just repeated would be a separate worksheet and would serve to remove a different aspect of what produces this whole complex of frustrations. So pick one of those, and then when we're complete, I'd suggest going back and doing each of the other ones. That she's more successful, she's this, she's that.
Okay,
So
so
pick one of those, whichever one you would like to, and put that in number one.
if
C.
if if we're looking at the insecure piece particularly, I'd say
Hmm.
that she's better than me
Okay.
is a juicy one.
All right. So that would be number one. C. My cousin is better than me.
Okay.
And is there a punishment pointed toward her, and or a punishment pointed toward yourself?
Okay. So if I put for 1C, what am I putting for 1D? Is that different?
Okay. 1C would be her name. We're going to focus on the cousin here.
Okay.
And then the story, she's the object of attention. That's the blank. And then my story is she's better than me. And breathe.
Okay. And where do I put the insecurity one? Nowhere?
Okay. Well, then number 1D, the truth is only my thoughts cause my emotional upset.
Mm,
Thought, and you want to, as I said, you want to do a separate worksheet on each one. I used to cause this emotion in number 1B is she's better than me. Are you breathing?
nope.
Nope. That's where you want to breathe. That's why that little reminder is right there in the middle of number 1D. Breathe.
So the 1C and the 1D are the same?
No, 1C would be her name, would be in that first blank.
Mm-hmm.
Name the object of your attention, and that would be my cousin,
Mm-hmm.
comma, and then what's my story would be that larger blank
So that she's better than me?
that she's better than me.
Okay. And then so 1D
So then 1D, so now what's the thought that caused my frustration? The emotion identified.
is the same thing.
Is it the same thing?
Is it?
One is a conclusion. My take that would be that probably 1D would be more like I'll never measure up or I'm not good enough.
Mm.
That would be the thought that underlies this whole structure. And what does that do to your breath when you think about it?
I mean, I hold my breath a lot. So the answer to that will usually be I'm holding my breath.
Okay. Well, we're going to keep reminding you to breathe then.
That's good.
It's
I'm glad
safe
that you
and
have this. I use the longer worksheet. So
it's safe and healing for you to breathe all the time. Okay, then yeah, good breath. That's the kind that releases. So number 1E, I want to punish 1C, my cousin, by is there a punishment thought toward her?
um
Are you
I mean
breathing?
the first thing that starts to I find myself in this part often saying something like, it's almost like the punishment is maybe to work even harder or
So
like
that would be a
I
punishment
gotta
toward yourself, right?
right, right.
So that would be the second part of 1E, self by working harder. But what would punishment be for her? Is there a punishment? It might be something like avoid.
Yeah, it's usually like avoid so that I can work harder and when I come back, I can be better.
Okay. So that would be what you put in number 1C.
Avoid. Okay.
And then there's a little box there. I release and surrender myself. And the idea here, when you realize that most of the structuring of the human mind came to us through words, messages, and in particular, seeing as how you're doing the self-study codependence to interdependence communication intensive,
Hmm.
to tie it in there is that most of the times our thoughts are about how somebody else did it to us. And oftentimes that comes down to a power person message. And the first message that most people are disconnected from being through is a message from the power person that goes something like, you're broken, you're not good enough, you'll never be
Mm,
good enough, whatever. There's always some variation on theme in that regard. And so it came through words. And so in the same way that words coming in helped us to structure certain realities, as we become a master of our own physiology, you can direct with words the energies in your structure to change or liberate those energies. So that little box is about verbal release. So I release and surrender, and if you look through, this is each step in number one. I release and surrender myself to love. I release and surrender my emotion of frustration to love. I release and surrender my cousin to love. I release and surrender my story that I'm not as good as my cousin to love. I release and surrender my thought and my so just briefly go through, and you can do it out loud or just do it to yourself. Each of those, and as you breathe, just it's developing a skill of directing energies out of your own structure. So if you want to just go ahead and do that, we'll breathe with you and hold the space. I release and surrender myself, Tiffany, to love.
Release and surrender myself, Tiffany, to love. I release and surrender my emotions to love. I
Okay, so
release and
be
surrender.
specific with I release this emotion of
Oh,
frustration
I see.
to love.
I release and surrender my frustration and insecurity to love.
Yep.
I release and surrender my cousin Anna to love. I release and surrender my story that she is better to love. I release and surrender my thoughts that I'll never measure up to love. I release and surrender my avoidance and my working harder punishments to love.
Yeah. And just take a couple of deep breaths with that and just imagine, visualize and see the energetic dynamics behind these patterns, just softening and wherever they're stored in your body. You do that deep physical release and just let those parts of your own structure, as you pay attention, if you notice any part of the release where there's tension going on, it might be your big toe, a calf muscle, whatever, and just let yourself breathe into it and let it go. Take a minute to just be with that.
Just a little dizzy.
Okay. Well, and that's toxic release happening. The cells are letting go
Mhm.
when it hits the brain. Boom, brain fart. You get dizzy. That's awesome. Nice,
I,
nice,
c- I,
nice level of release.
I cancel my need to be right and make up another story out of these brain cells to hallucinate proof that my fear and hostility based story, my reality is true.
Yeah, good one.
And do I put little check marks not next to
Yeah,
these? Is that what that little
yeah.
box
I
is?
just
Okay.
that's what the little box is there, just to confirm. Yep, just
Okay.
energetically to confirm I'm doing that.
Okay.
And what I'll invite you to do is just to, we're down to the last minute, but we'll just quickly cover number 2A and spend some time with that. And if you'd like, we can come back and do it Monday, or if you decide to finish it over the weekend, whatever works, and we can process around it Monday, whatever fits. But the
Yeah.
idea here is in 2A, I choose to honor truth. Like, okay, I see up here, I've got all kinds of unconscious stuff going on that's blocking me from truth. So I'm going to honor truth, and I willingly face and process out all disease producing energies for or from all of my relations. So it's like you're not just doing this for yourself, this is for all of your generations. And I willingly go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms of healing. And on a physical level, healing looks like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had in low energy. On a mental level, looks like any kind of negative thought you've ever had in confusion. And on an emotional level, looks like any kind of negative feeling you've ever had in depression. That's what healing looks like. And that's where you
Mm.
want to really engage the breath, be in willingness, and let that move. And then number 3, looking at the situation with your cousin as you outlined it in number 1C. What's the goal you held for your cousin in that situation? And the show is going to cut us off, so I'm going to just say, any last thoughts to share or questions before we leave it
No,
with
I
you?
mean, I look forward to continuing this. Like our conversation has opened up a lot I'm like, oh, there's a lot more than I thought. There we go.
Awesome, delighted, and I suggest you listen to it again and really make notes of every thought that you touched into, because each of those thoughts is going to be another worksheet. And thank you for your willingness to do it, because, of course, you're not alone in this. Everybody, we're all in the same boat. We're all covering the same sorts of things. And I did miss a couple of comments. For instance, so Linda said, when I'm unintegrated, I'm actually functioning as a disintegrated multiple personality state was the insight so Linda had as she was listening
Mm,
and participating. And then she offered in the chat room, integrated as my ground of being, love above and beyond my personas. Good catch,
mm.
Linda. Nice piece of work.
Thank you,
And
Celinda.
touching into the true and authentic self. So a big awe from Joe. We'll have to find out what Joe came up with that awe a few minutes ago, and a thank you. So delighted, and we'll look forward to talking on Monday.
I appreciate it. I'll
Delighted to
talk to
chat
you
with you.
then.
All right,
Yeah,
lots of love
same
and
here.
blessings. Appreciate your willingness.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care, everybody. Have the best year yet
Bye
of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world.
bye.